Welcome to East Alabama Today, featuring topics, events, and interesting people from all over East Alabama. Hosted by Carl Brady. Now, let's get right to the show. Here's Carl Brady.
Hello, everyone. Welcome into East Alabama Today. I'm Carl Brady. Thanks for joining us on today's program. As always, we'll start things off with some contact information so you know how to get in touch with us here on the show. If you have an idea for the program, we would love to hear from you, and all you got to do is send us an email. My email address is cbrady@tv24.tv. That's the best way to get in touch with me, so send me that email. If you know of things going on in East Alabama that you think we need to be talking about, then that's exactly what we need you to do. Fairs, festivals, special events, things that are going on with your church or your community club or organization, let us know about those events. And you never know, you may find yourself sitting here as a guest talking about it on East Alabama Today. And we also like to get to know the interesting people who live in our community. Maybe you know someone who is a writer, an artist, or a musician. Maybe they have an odd or an interesting hobby and you think they'd be a great guest for the program. Those are exactly the kind of people that we are looking for. So send me information about them as well. Again, to the email address cbrady@tv24.tv. And remember the website, tv24.tv, an on-demand section there where you can go and see East Alabama Today on your computer. Keep up with the show, and if you happen to miss a show, maybe you want to go back and review some information, or you only got to see part of it on TV, you can go to tv24.tv, click on the on-demand menu, choose East Alabama Today, and there's a whole series of East Alabama Today shows that you can go back and watch again right there in the comfort of doing it on your computer. Now, we have a special guest with us today who is a local author, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back into East Alabama Today. Thanks for joining us on the program. As I mentioned, a fun show today. I think you're going to enjoy meeting another local author. We really enjoy having local authors on the program. It's amazing how many talented writers there are just here in East Alabama, and you're going to enjoy getting to know Susan Sullivan today. Susan, welcome to the program.
Hi, Carl. It's great to be here.
Great to have you on and to talk about your books and your writing and the things you've been involved with. We'll just jump right into it. You've got 4 books that are out right now. They're all available as ebooks, and 2 of them are available as paperbacks as well. But just give me an overall view before we talk about the specific books, an overall view of your writing. This is suspense, mystery with a little paranormal mixed in, a little comedy mixed in, and geared for a younger reader. Is that correct?
Well, it depends. My Cleo Tidwell books, which are the 2 novels that are in paperback and ebook, are geared toward adults, although younger people could enjoy them, but really women between the ages of 25 to 65 would enjoy these books, and actually a few men.
Yeah.
I've had some men read and review them, and they really enjoyed them, so it can appeal to both. And then my 2 short story collections are actually geared to what we call young adult, which could be anywhere from middle school readers to adults age 25. So, and I also say they're for the young of heart too.
Well, what got you started in writing? What's your background that led you into putting words to paper?
Well, 2 things. One, I owe a large part to my basic comp teacher in high school, Mr. Johnson, and he had us write short stories in class, and he didn't criticize us or get out the red pen like a lot of teachers do and just mark them up. He just, said write, and every week we brought in something, we could read it in front of the class, which being the big ham that I am, of course, that I had to do that. And it was really fun. And I got a lot of good feedback from it. And the very first thing I wrote was a radio drama.
Oh, really?
Yes, I had to go for the challenging things, of course. But as a kid, I grew up listening to the CBS Radio Mystery Theater every night before I went to sleep. And so I loved that format of storytelling. So that's what I started with. And then my dad's side of the family has a long line of storytellers. None of them were actually published, but my grandfather was a Methodist minister, so he wrote sermons.
Right.
And then I had several aunts who are from Gadsden, actually. They have passed on, but they would tell my brother and sister and I these wonderful ghost stories. Every time they would come to visit, and we'd want to hear the same story, and a lot of it was delivery, and they would just ham it up, and we just could not get enough of that. And my dad actually was working on a novel, a military novel before he passed, but he was in radio and television and did some acting too. So he would tell us stories about his life, and we would always hear about the time that he ran down the bully Bulldog Scott with his bicycle here in Gadsden, and the Bulldog Scott never messed with him again after that. So,
sounds like a fun story.
So those two things are what inspired me to start writing.
When did you actually decide to be published and to write seriously and put your work out for people to see?
That's a great question, because if you go way back to high school, I was writing for fun, and then I started writing a novel when I was 18, the trunk novel, as we call it. Never see the light of day, and for good reason. And I joined a writers group when I moved to Chicago in 1999, and I started looking at publishing short stories, and I sent off a few to magazines but got rejected, and it just crushed me. And I didn't submit anything for a long time. And then in 2004, I just decided I'm going to do it. I'm going to go as long as I need to until I am professionally published. And the following year, actually I made that decision, and a few months later, a writer friend of mine told me about a writer's workshop called the Odyssey Speculative Fiction Writing Workshop. Long title, but it's fantastic. It's one of the premier writing workshops in the country. It's a writer's boot camp. You go to New Hampshire for 6 weeks.
6 weeks, wow.
Yes, 6 weeks. And yes, you're away from your support system unless you live in New Hampshire, which I didn't. And you just are immersed in writing. You take lectures, you're involved in critique sessions, and then you do your own writing. And we would start at 9 a.m. in the morning, and I would stay up till 2 a.m. until I had to use my glasses to read the computer. I'm like, I think it's time for bed. I can't see the computer anymore even. But I loved it. I'd wake up in the morning and prop my eyes open, but I'd go, wow, I'm here with 16 other writers. And after that, that's when I started selling short stories. I graduated. They had told us rejection is part of it. Get used to it.
Yeah.
Yes. And so, you just start submitting. And I had learned now, I had a focus. Okay. So the workshop, instead of just being ambling all over the place with my writing, I had a focus. I knew how to write a first draft, how to revise it, how to submit it, that it was going to probably get rejected, and just to keep on. And I kept on, and now I've got 2 novels and 2 short story collections, and I'm working on my 3rd novel, which is actually a departure from my series, which is called The Simon Silvestri School for the Supernaturally Challenged. Yeah, I'm glad you laughed.
That sounds interesting, yeah.
Like Harry Potter meets the Munsters.
Yeah.
And then I'll return to the Cleo Tidwell mysteries, and my working title is Top Vampire Chef, and it should be, right now, my idea is it will be taking place in a local TV station.
Interesting, yeah. That'll be fun.
Yeah, so 2004. But I had, after going to Odyssey, I am now friends with several professional writers, and they said, give yourself 10 good years to make it. Not like you'll start and the next year you'll be Stephen King or Jane Ivanovich, but 10 years just to get going. So I'm ahead of schedule.
Good. What was the key that maybe you learned at Odyssey, or the change that went from being a rejected author that all of a sudden your manuscripts are getting attention? What did you change? What was the key that started getting people's attention?
How to plot. And it seems real obvious. That's the story, but it's one of the hardest things for a writer to do well. Mm-hmm. And when you learn how to write well, you find out that plots actually have twists, that they're not just a straight line or a dead line, as we say. That's not very interesting. Something has to change. A character has to change. Something in the story has to change. In a mystery, very often the detective is going down one avenue and then they'll find a clue that will send them in a totally different direction. So you've got to have several of these changes, these little mini cliffhangers that keep the reader, wanting to keep turning pages. And so there's actually a structure to a novel or a play or a TV show. And then at the very end, you have an ending with a twist that is surprising and yet inevitable. Mm-hmm. And so I remember that Jean Cavellis, the director of Odyssey, it was one of the things she said that just has burned in my mind. And so I set out to craft my writing to have these elements, and apparently it was what I needed.
That's what you needed, yes. It sounds like.
Yes, because then I started to get acceptances for money.
Which is always a good thing.
Yes.
Yeah. We need to take a commercial break, so we'll do that right now and be back in just a moment. Stay with us. And we welcome you back into East Alabama today. Susan Sullivan is our guest, and throughout the period of the show, we'll show you the books that we're talking about. We're going to talk about specific books a little bit more in this segment, but I do want to ask you, when you write your books, do they have an element of localness of Anniston? You live in Anniston. I read a book recently. I just accidentally ran across it on Kindle, and it was offered for free. It looked interesting, so I downloaded it. I read it, and I've got the author coming on in a couple of weeks because it was written by a local author. I did not know that, but as soon as I was in the first chapter of the book and I started recognizing places that I know, even though the names were changed and some things like that, I started like, he's writing about my local community. I got to find this guy. Do you do that in your books? Is there going to be something in there that people will recognize?
Oh, absolutely, especially the Haunted Housewives of Allister, Alabama. Yes, it's a fictional town that is based heavily on Anniston and Auburn, where I went to college, and a little bit of Jacksonville mixed in. Mm-hmm. So, when I made that decision in 2004 to get serious about my writing, my sister said, write what you know. And she's not a writer, but boy, she is right. And so that's what I did, about a housewife in a town like Anniston, a good old Southern girl, and who was a majorette coach for the local university. And I used to twirl, and I used to teach coach twirlers, and who lives in a big Victorian house. If you notice on the novel, there's a picture of a Victorian house in the background. Right. My publisher did a great job. She'd seen a picture of my house for a guest blog I wrote, and she found that house is not my house, but it sure looks a lot like it. I'm in the Tyler Hill Historic District, so all these elements came together. But yes, as I'm writing the book, I'm envisioning my street and different parts of Anniston, and there's the mountain and the downtown. And so yes, a lot of readers who are local have read the book and said, hey, that's such and such a place. And,
so they recognize the locations as
absolutely. Well. And then the second book, which I have here, the Weredog Whisperer, is set in a fictional Panama City beach type place. And even though I'm from Alabama, I grew up in Montgomery, my family moved to Pensacola when I was in middle school. So I count myself as a Floridian and Alabamian. Yeah. So I could pull on my childhood growing up experiences in writing that one too. But I actually did go visit Panama City before I wrote the book.
Absolutely. Most of your writing has a little bit of a paranormal, supernatural type twist to it. I love that kind of stuff. I noticed one of your favorite authors was Stephen King. I can read Stephen King all day long, and Richard Bachman, which is one of his pen names that most people don't know when they pick up a Richard Bachman book, that they're picking up Stephen King too, and they're just as good. And so I read a lot of what people consider crazy stuff like that. But you have a supernatural, paranormal twist to a lot of your writing. Where does that come from? Experiences or just something you're interested in?
You know, if I could answer that question, I would save a lot in psychologist fees. I'm just kidding. But really, I mean, if you write paranormal, people are like, yeah, you're a little weird, aren't you? And I don't look like the typical paranormal writer. I look like, and people say, you look so sweet. You look too sweet to write scary stuff. And I said, well, if you only knew, you know, normal on the outside, paranormal on the inside. But it may have gone back to those ants telling ghost stories. You know, the South has a deep history and culture of ghosts and paranormal.
And you live in an old Victorian house.
Yes.
How much more spooky and haunted can you get than an old Victorian house in the South?
Exactly. And sometimes I use a Jessica Rabbit paraphrase from, oh gosh. Now I'm trying to think of that movie with the
Who
crazy...
Framed Roger Rabbit?
Yes,
One
thank
of
you.
my favorite movies. I know that sounds weird for a 46-year-old man, but I wasn't 46 when it came out.
Yeah, she says this line about, I'm not bad, I'm just drawn that way.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's like the paranormal. I don't know, I just seem to be drawn that way. But then there's the comedy element too.
Mm-hmm. So
I wanted to be a serious writer. When I started writing, I was writing, the Lord of the Rings type, 3-book, doorstopper type books, and there was nothing funny at all in them. And I just worked on that for so long. And then in my writers group in Chicago, I submitted a story. We would have to get up before the whole class and read our work. And I was strictly volunteer, but again, being the ham that I am, I volunteered to read the story called Space Invaders. Now I thought it was a pretty serious, science fiction-y kind of short story, and people just laughed and laughed and laughed throughout it. And
but it wasn't intended to be funny.
Right. I thought, it's like the things that make you go, huh.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, usually it's supposed to be a bad thing if people are laughing at your work. But I thought, well, maybe I'm funny and I don't really know it. So I sent the story. It was one of my first stories I submitted for publication, and that got accepted. And the editor said, this is the funniest thing we have ever read up to this point. And I'm like, okay, that seals it. And then when I went off to Odyssey, my lighthearted pieces got better critiques than my more serious things. So I thought, I guess I just need to write comedy with the paranormal.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. So,
what's your process of writing when you decide, all right, it's time to write another book? Is your mind just constantly full of ideas that you have to struggle to gather into one time frame, or do you go off? I've got a friend who writes, and he's got a friend with a cabin somewhere, and he decides, okay, I'm going to go off to this cabin for a month by myself, and I'm going to write a book while I'm there. And he has no contact with anybody for a whole month while he writes his book. What's your process?
My process is varied, and there's really no one process for any particular work. The Haunted Housewives was sort of a struggle because it was my first finished novel. I had the trunk novel, but it just reached a point where it was so convoluted I had to put it down and just walk away. So the Haunted Housewives, I wrote a draft, took it to the Odyssey. The director made several suggestions on why it wasn't working. Then I had to come back and totally rewrite it from scratch with the comedy in mind, and apparently I had picked a haunted painting motif, which was just overdone. So she said, well, if you want to do a haunted painting, you got to find a twist that no one has done. So I thought, what is funny about a haunted painting? Because it wasn't really funny in the first draft. And I thought, a haunted velvet Elvis. That just makes me laugh. It made you laugh.
Yeah, I can see Elvis coming alive.
Yes. He takes over the heroine's husband, in little bits until he finally is channeling Elvis. And so then the next draft was a lot faster. Now that I had my shtick, and then the revisions went faster still. And then I have shopped it around and found a publisher, and now it's published. And then the Weredog Whisperer, now that one just flowed out of me.
Yeah.
I had, again, I thought, okay, I want to do another motif. I'm done with haunted paintings, funny haunted paintings. So I love werewolf stories, but there are tons of werewolves published in books. And so I thought, what would be a funny twist in the werewolf story? Well, how about a were-dog? And I thought, let's take it one step further. How about if it's a dog that becomes a teenage girl during the full moon?
Yeah.
A lot of people treat their dogs like kids, and I certainly do. My dog was the inspiration for Luna, the were-dog or were-daughter, and a Weredog Whisperer. And so I thought, this has a lot of fun potential. And so that was how that just flowed out of me. And then with the whole Panama City, we got tacky tourist traps and spring break, and it's just a funny place anyway.
Yeah.
So that's how that one came about. My next novel, the Simon Silvestri School, that one I've been working off and on for several years now. And usually I stop it for other projects. I picked up a publisher, or they picked up me. And so I needed to focus on getting these 2 books done. So I'm like, it's time to go finish the Simon Silvestri novel. And I was about 8 chapters into it before I had to put it down. So, so I'm picking that back up, and we're just kind of going to see where it rolls. But it's like Indiana Jones, he says, I don't know, I'm just making this up as I go.
Yeah.
And that's how it starts initially. And then you use craft to go in.
To fix it and craft it and put it together. Exactly.
Yes.
We're running short on time, but I do want to ask you this. Did getting a publisher add pressure? Because now you've got to finish the book. You've got to get it done on deadline. You can't just play around with it and work on it when you can. Does that add pressure to getting the work done?
It's a good pressure, and it really was not bad at all, because to get a publisher, you want your book completely finished. I mean, you want it as good as you can get it. Mm-hmm. So you don't ever want to send in a first draft to a publisher. But then the publisher is going to want changes, and then you're going to negotiate changes, and then you have deadlines to get revisions done, and then you've got to proof it. But I felt like I am making it. Yeah. So it was a good thing. It's like I have a job now. It's not just as people think, she's a writer, she just plays around.
Right.
Well, no, I get paid to write now. So yeah, and my publisher has set me deadlines, but they're very meetable, deadlines. So it was a good thing.
Good. Another commercial break, and we'll take it right now and be back with a quick wrap up in just a moment. Stay with us. Well, welcome back in. Our final couple of minutes with Susan Sullivan talking about her books. And as we mentioned, the 4 books that are out are all available online as ebooks. You have a couple that are available in paperback. Tell us where we can get those books.
Okay, well, Amazon.com would be the easiest, the place most people know. BarnesandNoble.com. Locally, Nunnally's Framing Shop sells them. They sell as many local authors as they can find, so you can actually get a paperback copy. And my publisher is now selling books directly through their website too, World Weaver Press, just www.worldweaverpress.com. And Kobo and Omnilit, and there may be another couple of places that I don't remember for ebooks, but definitely paperbacks. Through Amazon or Nunnally's.
So just go to your favorite online bookseller and search Susan Sullivan. Those books will come up, and you can purchase them right there on your computer. Also, your website. Tell us about your website real quick.
Yes, www.susanablesullivan.weebly.com, and it's just about my books and about my writing. I have a blog. I haven't been as faithful with writing, keeping up my blog, but I talk about inspiration and different things, goofy things that happen in my life. My life is a lot like my characters. Just the goofiest, craziest things happen sometimes. So, you can read about how my real life inspires my fiction.
All right. Sounds good. Susan, it's been a great pleasure to have you on the show.
Absolutely.
And folks, it's been a pleasure to have you as well. Thanks for joining us on East Alabama Today. See you again next time.